Napoleonic law.
Never heard of that.
That's the way it was. Dictators. They did whatever they wanted. And if they thought you were disloyal or this or that, and they had all these hundreds of Nazi war criminals working for them, they let them live openly and gave them jobs because they had skills. So they taught the Latinos how to do this stuff because that wasn't their nature. And 40,000 people disappeared. And at the time, we were allowed to go to Iran and Chile, but we weren't allowed to go to Argentina because it was even more dangerous. So the manager of the power plant told me, he said, "Mark, you don't know how bad it was." He was a college student out at the local bar where the college kids go. And all of a sudden, the secret police like that, they came there because the students are there. That's where the target was, students, professors. So they turned on the lights, stopped the music, and said, "If anyone has a knife or a gun on you, step forward. Because we're going to find you anyways. We're going to search everyone. And if everyone with a knife or a gun that we believe is a weapon, or maybe it's even a hunting knife, the guys," he said, "if we find one weapon or anything subversive, we're not only going to kill the people we find with them, we're going to bring everyone in this room behind and machine gun you in the river and throw your bodies in the river. And nobody will ever find you unless they find the bodies rotten." So this guy who was manager of the power plant, an engineer, he says, "Oh shit, I might be dead. I didn't do anything wrong. What if one person has a gun? This is that." And he said he thought he was going to be dead. What if somebody has a knife and they're just, they go hunting or something? He really thought he was going to be dead that night. But he was lucky.
That's a true dick.
Yes. Then I had to go to get, and they were Nazis. The top Nazis lived openly, and then they had to go underground later. But lower level people, like when I was there later, they arrested some of them and deported them back to Italy to stand trial. Like Eric Priebke, he deported more than 300,000 Jews from Italy, Naples, Rome, and he murdered over 300 Italian civilians. They killed a German soldier, so he made people, they went to houses and got the grandchildren, the father, and the grandparents. They brought them to a cave and machine gunned them all, 3 generations. So in the late 90s, they extradited him to Italy, and he died of a heart attack in prison like 3 years later. But you know what the Italians said? The way they feel about that stuff, killing 3 generations. And he was just one of many who lived openly in the town where I was. They'd hang out. They lived openly. The Italians said, "We don't want him to stand trial. We want you to let him go. We want to string him up ourselves. Like Mussolini. We're going to string him up and beat him to death in the square. And every granny is going to hit him with a stick. And then we're going to piss on him. And let the dogs eat him. We don't want a trial. We know how to deal with these bastards." And they said, "No, this is the law." But then they all took off. but they lived openly. I'd stay opposite the Kunstmann Hotel, Kuntsman, and other places. And I say, I wonder if those are Nazi places. 20 years later, when the dictators were gone and they had tours of the Nazi, like 60 Minutes, Nazi tour of Bariloche. Yep, it was. It was owned by a Nazi colonel and this and that. And then you find out that all these places were like that. They all lived openly. They were war criminals. Yeah. So it was really, really wild. You got to see all that stuff and hear the stories. And yeah. Well, I see it on TV stuff now. They have shows about this.
Like Finding Nazi.
Yeah. And there was a place I used to drive by to go fishing all the time. You drive by the river, then you go by the lake. And on the lake, there'd be an island. And there was this old big building, like big concrete. Looked like a parking garage that was destroyed, blown up. And I'd say, is this a Nazi place? Or was this like the dictatorship? And they had army there, and then when the dictators lost, they blew it up because democracy. Well, it said there were all these high-level Nazis living there, and they had towers to protect them in case anyone came to get them, even though the government protected them. But they were afraid that if the Israelis came and got them, or if the dictatorship fell and then they came to get them, or the world came after him, said, we know they're there, we're going to get... And these were high people responsible for deportations of hundreds of thousands of Jewish people and mass murders and industrial businessmen that built the death camps, engineers that engineered the equipment and financed it, top bastards. And so right after the war, the dictators in Argentina and Chile welcomed them. They had skills they wanted. And there were German colonies. I had a lot of friends that hated this stuff. And their grandparents, great-grandparents, were from Germany in the 1880s. But some people hid them for money. Oh, well, they're paying me. I'll let them live on the farm because they're sending me gold bars. So I'll make money and he'll work, and he didn't do anything wrong. Everyone did it. The British did it, But then other people said, this is wrong. These guys are bad, but there's nothing I can do about it.
Might be little bait fish. You see it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it was all like that, What do you think of that one? Pretty. And then, so when I had to get my working visa, what do you call it? Renewed. In Buenos Aires, I went to this big police station. And knowing that this was all like that and secret police disappearing, and it wasn't a police station like we know it here. It looked like Gestapo headquarters. It was these big buildings and courtyards and big buildings with jail cells where they had and tortured prisoners to death and disappeared. I felt like I was going to the Berlin SS Gestapo headquarters. It was built just like that. And it gave me the creeps, and I walked around and was visualizing. I said, these cells weren't for people that were drunk and driving. They were for a college professor. They torture him to death and find out who else had subversive literature, who let you use their typewriter.
Crazy.
So I felt really creepy going there and seeing it. And then another thing in Bariloche, which is a Nazi town, it was all like Edelweiss stuff. You'd go out 20 miles away and there'd be this big, like, hotel that was like in Austria. And it was all Nazi stuff. They were owned by Nazis. Nazis made money in the gut. And then my fishing buddies told me they were truck mechanics and truck drivers. They said when they were kids, when all these guys were 40 years old, these criminals, when they were learning how to do trucks, the big tractor company there, before Komatsu, before John Deere, there were red tractors, red with a big M on the front. Mengele Tractor Company, like Joseph Mengele. His family was a Nazi family, and they hid him and all that. They were Nazis, hardcore. So that was a tractor company. So I got a picture of Mengele Street, imagine, in Argentina. And he said that to support the Nazis in the area, beside working on farms, he said when they imported the Mengele tractors, his friends, he never did, but his friends used to take apart the crankcase and stuff, and they'd hide gold bars in them, and they'd have to give a cut to the dictatorship. The dictatorship said, yeah, we want 15% of everything that comes in. And okay, we'll assure you it'll get to them safely, the Nazis safely. They told that to the Mengele family. They later arrested a guy named Stradelmeyer. He's a member that they found he was sending letters to Joseph Mengele, telling him, that's how they found out he died. They raided his house and found letters. He was the most wanted person in the world. And he protected him. A guy like that. So all this stuff, I got to know people who knew firsthand about all this shit. What do you think of that? And it was open because it was dictatorships. Not only did some of the German colonies, they believed it was their people and had no morals, but beside that, they were dictators. And these guys knew how. They had high skills, the best, Gestapo, SS. So it was like hiring an aerospace expert to work on your airline. So most of these war criminals found easy work in these places. They were sought out after. What do you think of that? And the world, like Germany, dragged their feet, but when they started bringing them to trial and trialed them in absentia and put out warrants and sent the warrants to Chile and Argentina and said, this is a world warrant arrest. You have to turn him over. The dictator said, no, he's a Chilean citizen. He stays in Chile. They were protected. Even though the world, he was someone wanted for big, like another guy. You imagine this guy, Walter Rauff. He was an SS colonel. He developed the mobile gassing vans that they first started murdering Jewish people, my people, on the Eastern Front. They pull up in a truck. They went from shooting to that. Then they made permanent gas chambers at Treblinka, Belzec, and another one. Sobibor, those were the first generation. And he was the one who developed all that stuff. His job was to figure out how to kill more people as quickly as he can. And then he followed Rommel. When Rommel went in the Middle East, Rommel turned against them and was on the plot to kill Hitler because he didn't think they should be killing women and children, but he believed in Germanizing the world. But he was against genocide. Yeah. He said it's not right killing women and children. Maybe if you kill men of army age, but a woman, a grandma, he